Hey guys, it's Angel. Welcome back to the channel, and today we are trying out something very new and fun. This is Aerosoft's Antarctica Volume 1, which is British for Thera and beyond. Now, this strikes me in initial observations to be essentially a conversion of their FSX Antarctica. Now, you can tell that from some of the texture quality, but in general, Antarctica is not very well represented in the sim. It's actually pretty bad, because there's no satellite data for it. Well, not very much, and nothing very high resolution, and I will tell you why when we're in the air. But basically, this includes tons of animations, and vehicles, boats, animals, penguins, sounds, coverage beyond the bases, and they've got the glaciers, you've got the various stations, ice flows. They claim to have hundreds of thousands of ice packs and flows throughout the region. There are off-site landing strips at 2 of the British field locations with custom models. There's terrain data and custom elevation mapping for this, and they've added wind shear to the areas around the glaciers, which is kind of cool. Now, the manual also comes with flight plans and some simple charts to use for your flying, and you can visit all the automated stations that are here. Now, let's take a look. We brought the 172 on skis today because, well, it seems appropriate given the case, and as you can see there, is a tracked vehicle moving across the runway to one of the bases. And this is British Rothera base. We've got the runway here. The vehicles working their way over to the actual research laboratories and stations over there. And we have, just because Aerosoft are trolls, what looks to be a simplified, stripped-down version of the new Twin Otter. It might be the old Twin Otter, it might be their old one they used for an actual 3D model, just to have it sitting here on the actual strip. But whatever it is, it's a simplified, stripped-down texture version for a static aircraft. But this is so tempting, considering we know this is coming soon, and I will definitely be flying one of these out of here. Now, the ground texture quality does look like satellite imagery, which is why it looks a bit weird at close range, so there is that. But look at this, this is stunning. Absolutely breathtaking. You know, I can forgive a little bit of murkiness at certain levels, but you know how it is. Right, let's get ourselves up in the air, not in a rush whatsoever. Make sure we are good to go. Crack throttle, brakes applied. Engine is good. Okay, we are ready to rock and roll. Let's make sure our transponder's on. We're set to 7,000. Excellent. We got our ski controls here. Okay, we are good to rock and roll. So let's get ourselves out to the runway, shall we? Now, our gear is currently in the retracted position, which is where we want it for the moment. And we've got low wind, so we can take off whichever way we like here. Now, as I mentioned, Antarctica's not very well... English, I'm having a stroke. It's not very well represented. Why? Because there aren't a lot of satellites that come down here, and those that do are usually doing weather information and other forms of mapping, not photo mapping. They're not taking high-resolution photo imagery. Now, maybe that's something that I think scientists would love. In fact, I'm pretty sure they would, but the reason why is because polar orbits are hard. To have a satellite in that sort of orbit, you need to take off from a launch site where you can go north or south, which is actually limiting. There are places like Vandenberg that can do polar orbits, so there are not a lot of launch windows for that, and it ends up being something that's a bit more, should we say, infrequent. Oh look, penguins. Right, we're airborne here. So our trip today is a pretty short one, about 30 minutes. We're going to be heading out to a research ship just off the coast. What's that down there? Oh, it's a boat. Lovely. We're heading to a research ship off the coast, and we are going to be, from there, flying. In fact, you know what? First, we're going to go visit the emergency airstrip just above Rothera on the Glacier here, which is one of the other landing sites. There are a couple of bases represented. In fact, that right there is another ship just landed down, or landed, floating down there in the actual ocean here. But up on the Glacier here, we should have the emergency strip for Rothera, just located above the base. We'll try and find it. I think it's going to be on this patch here just above the existing station. So we've got that down there. to our right is the actual base itself. And where is the emergency strip? Now, the strip is actually pretty frequently used. It's used by local traffic whenever there's international flights coming in. Look at that, that's a bit... there. I think it might literally be land of the Glacier. I'm not sure, but that might be the case of it. So that is brisk if that's the case. Oh, hello. Camera goes burr. We'll try to avoid that when it wants to do that. This is relatively pretty, I'll give it that. I am getting some serious FSX vibes. Oh, hello. Blurry texture. This is 12 euros, so this is not an incredibly expensive scenery pack. Now, you've got something like Okavanga Delta with Orbex, which is incredibly high detail and incredibly extensive, very detailed, expensive, 30-ish mark. Now, that actually had a ton in it, and it's in a beautifully well-mapped area, so you could do a lot more with an area like that. Considering the poor state of Antarctica in MSFS to start with, this isn't terrible. Okay, we're heading that way. That's the way we need to be going. Over there. So, yeah, the standard in the sim as it is not great. It's poor. And that's because there aren't a lot of satellites over here. Because most satellites that do photo mapping are in geosync orbits or they're in equatorial orbits. They're going around the planet, which is how they can do that. Now, you have to basically send a satellite specifically here to map here, which means it needs to be launched into a polar orbit to start with, which means it's going around the poles rather than around the actual planet. Now, a lot of satellites go from either Baikonur in Russia, they go from ESA launch sites, and they go from the Cape. Now, that means that you're mostly getting launches on the ballpark 57 degrees sort of heading or latitude, which means that you're getting orbits that go diagonally around the planet, which is what gets you to what we would normally consider a general orbit for communications, for mapping satellites, surveillance satellites, research satellites, and space stations like the ISS, which are on that sort of launch trajectory. Why that trajectory? Well, in the case of the Cape, it's because that direction lets rockets take out and go with the direction of the travel of the Earth over the ocean when they're discarding stages, which of course isn't as much a deal with SpaceX rockets, which don't discard their stages, but in case of what we call in the space industry a RUD, or a rapid unscheduled disassembly, explosion of rocket, nothing falls on people. China doesn't care about that, but that's another matter. Either way, it means that you end up with fixed directions you can launch rockets in, and fixed latitudes, so you don't get as many down here as you'd want. Now, that means we've ended up with less quality in terms of the photo scenery in the region. Does that mean maybe Microsoft or Aerosoft should have actually done a lot more manual work down here? Maybe, because I think you could have done a far better job manually than some of the potato that you can see down here. A lot of Aerosoft's elevation data and material has improved things a lot, but it's better than it was. It's not great. Now, we're going to be just flying over here, so not a huge deal. In fact, I'll probably skip a few of these segments so you guys aren't bored out of your brain stems as we fly along across ocean. But we'll obviously get to that when we get there. But we'll be heading to the research ship out here, the Polar Stone research ship, and then we're heading down to a mapping station just across the island over there. We're going to attempt a landing at the monitoring station, so that should be an exciting bit of an adventure for us there. I will join you when we get a little bit closer to the Polar Stern and we can see the ship, and then we'll head south towards the island. Hey folks, welcome back to FSX. Yeah, no kidding, right? So Aerosoft's improved things, but it's bad down here. It is not a phenomenal area, and the coastlines are a little bit jagged in places, but not as bad as they used to be. But welcome to a textured mountain. Yeah. Not seen this in a long time, haven't we? Yeah. It's better than the photo scenery blur in a lot of the parts, and it loads very slowly down here. I'm not sure why. It's an area that really hasn't been considered much by Asobo. Obviously, a lack of data means it's hard to make it look good, and consider the frequency that people are going to fly down here. It's kind of rare, and you know what? Texture Mountain, it's a lot better than potato photo scenery, I'll give it that. It's not great, but how often am I going to fly in Antarctica? Now, typically you'll be flying things like twatters and caravans and things between the various actual stations, where you'll be a lot higher over a lot of the scenery. But around a lot of the points of interest, you'll find there's a lot more detail. Now, we're heading down towards the end here of this, well, inlet, I guess, around the island. And we can just about make out the ship just there ahead of us. Just that point right there. Now, I will say, the ice flows and things, and a lot of the glaciers and the elevation maps have really improved the area. So, this is a massive improvement over what you get by stock. Because the area is terrible to start with. It's not great at all. It is literally taking you back to FSX in a worse way. Because the photo scenery loads badly and it's kind of crappy. And there's no ice flows out here. There's none of this out in the water that really adds to that immersion and the sense of being down here. So considering I will never fly in Antarctica, this adds a playability to the region that I would never have gotten otherwise. Now, the popping, I think, is an actual Asobo thing. I don't get this in any other region in the world. Could be a specific Antarctic issue, but what you see is what you get, unfortunately, in many cases. Now, is it something I enjoy? No. Am I likely to fly here much again? Probably not. At least not low down and close to things where it could slap me with its ugly. But I gotta say, at least to take a trip down here with this scenery for €12, it feels worthwhile because it does dramatically improve things. It gives you actual airstrips and bases that feel more realistic, and it gives you a lot more in terms of experience, because it is a lot better. Now, is 3 flyable bases and airstrips and a bunch of points of interest, coupled with what I believe feels like the FSX Antarctica, or Antarctica X, that they released, does that feel worthwhile? I don't know. But it's cheaper, considerably cheaper than it was in FSX, so yeah, maybe in that regard. And why make a bunch more icebergs when you don't have to, right? So here is the Polar Stern. This is a research vessel down here, in the middle of this ice flow, or ice field we should call it. We're going to just slow down here, descend down and fly past the ship. Nowhere for us to land, of course. We're not a helicopter. It has got a heli deck on the back. I don't know if it's solid, so if you want to fly out here in one of the helicopters in the sim, be my guest. But we're just going to do a little fly past here and enjoy what we can see of it, and get a little closer to this ice, because this looks so nice. I will say, the ice itself, what Aerosoft actually have done, like the ice and all the features, is gorgeous. The rest of the place might not be phenomenal, but the ice really sells the feeling of being here. So here's the Polar Stern, and it's a very detailed vessel from what I can see. Big gantry crane on the bow. Heli deck on the stern. Very cool ship. Probably landable, actually, if you're in a helicopter. Oh, yeah, let's get power on, shall we? Right, let's get ourselves turned. We're climbing across this island ahead of us, heading down to the research station we'll be landing at. So we will be back with you once I climb up to altitude and fly for another 15 minutes. So we're descending down to Horseshoe Harbour Monitoring Station right now, which it says is 20 miles away. It's not. It should be on the headland just ahead of us here, which is why I'm very confused as to why it's actually saying 22. Unless it's confused as to which track I'm on, which is also likely as it's going up. So if we look here, should be just here ahead of us, so should be on this part of land here now. We have got our skis deployed here on the 172. Not the sort of plane that would really service this sort of area, but hey, it's what we've got, right? So we're going to use it. Yeah, the area is pretty disappointing. it's only the Aerosoft pack that I think makes it worth flying down here. And I don't know whether I'd buy it if I wasn't reviewing it for the channel, or review slash flying out here because I wanted to do a video. I don't know. Because whilst it is kind of cool, this area feels like the FSX days. Like, Aerosoft did a huge job improving it, but I hate to use the expression, but they kind of polished a turd. Because this isn't great, honestly. They've done a huge amount of work, but it's glitter on dog poo. The area's bad. It needs a full rework. With what, I don't know, but it might actually be worthwhile using texture on the whole place rather than and land class and texture rather than going with this terrible photometry, because it takes forever to load in and it just looks terrible, I have to say. Alright, so we should be down here ahead of us. That's what I'm looking for. Is a monitoring station. Now, this says we're about to pass over it. I don't see one, do you? I don't see anything down there. Yeah, I just see ice. Let's go take a look around the coastline and see what we can find out, because this seems a little sparse of anything specific. Okay, so we're going to closely look around here. Now, this may be a remote weather monitoring station, which is a given. I can understand that, but I would expect to see something. I see a lot of ice, and I see a lot of material, but I see mostly flat scrub ground here. In fact, the skis would probably be inappropriate on this terrain, so let's pull those up, shall we? Now, I may go up here and see if there's anything up on the headland, because it says it's on the flatland here, but I don't quite believe it. That feels wrong. There's nothing down here. So we'll climb up the hilltop here, because a hilltop would be where I'd place a monitoring station. Not down on a flat that could probably change with the seasons and tides. So let's climb up this disgusting looking hill and take a look. We've got a glacier just ahead of us. And this should give us a better view. Oh god, this does look so nasty. And I feel like I'm dissing Aerosoft's product, and I can't, because it has changed a lot. And it has improved things, but I just don't know whether it's able to be improved. That's my biggest concern. I keep pressing the wrong switch when I'm trying to look around, and the area is laggy. The performance is poor. Like, I hate to say it, but it's just not a great area. Now, what's this? Is that a smudge? That's a smudge on the ice. Okay. Smudge on the ice. This is weird flying in third person, but I feel like I need to appreciate most of this. I don't see a monitoring station, do you? Well, regardless, we're going to go land on some snow, because I feel like that's something I really need to do in this video, just to at least cap it off. Now, me not finding it doesn't mean it's not there. It could be there somewhere, but maybe I'm just not having good luck. That could most likely be the resolution here. But as we climb up over where I'd put a monitoring station on the hill, I don't see any. Hell, I could have ended up on the wrong bloody hill. Equally plausible. Yep, equally plausible. No monitoring station visible. Well, that's sad. And this popping terrain makes me want to get out of here as quickly as possible. I do need to clarify, my computer is competent. I have a good machine. Apparently this is not it. Okay, well, see the glacier over there? We're going to go land on that. So, what we all need now is our skis. So let's deploy those and make sure those are set down. They are. Now, the thing with ski landing and ski flying is brakes don't do much, if anything. So you have to land and use momentum very carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slow, careful approach here. Use the drag curve to bring the aircraft down. And as I do so, I'm going to be pulling up my flaps on landing to allow the skis friction to do the job for me. I'm going to try and land uphill, or at least on a slight gradient, to give myself the best opportunity to stop. Okay, so Glacier is here. I'm going to turn around, actually, and come back in for my approach, because I'm a little too close here. So let's at least get something good out of this video, shall we? Some actual decent flying, rather than staring at this ghastly terrain that I'm really struggling with. Yeah, Aerosoft did improve it, but the region it's actually placed on top of is just not good. I mean, the elevation's decent. The coastline's not phenomenal, but it's the texture. I don't know why it's doing it, because I don't get this in any other region. Watch any of my other videos, you will not see terrain popping like this. It just doesn't happen. So that's what I'm struggling with mentally, is how this is doing this. Right, we're deploying flaps here. And I'm going to land on this section of the glacier here, just leading up to the crest where I can then turn down. So we're going to try and land roughly here. So I'm going to get the plane lined up properly for this approach. We've got full flaps deployed because I want to use the drag coefficient, which means I want to keep my wings almost straight as we're on our approach here rather than aiming down. This is a different technique of landing I'll cover in a later tutorial, where you're not aiming for speed on your approach, you're aiming for staying in the air at an impact point. It's complicated, but I'll get to it another time. As we come in now, I'm going to let the speed drop off. I'm managing just my touchdown position with the throttle. Let the aircraft drift down here. This is one of those times we don't need to be afraid of the stall horn. Okay, looking good. So, managing my speed down now. I'm just letting the aircraft sit and go down as it wants to. Small burst to just rotate the aircraft around. And we touch down. And while I still have forward momentum, flaps are up. I'm going to turn us to the side here, so we are side on, less likely to slide. And we'll let the aircraft grind itself to a halt here on the snow as it wants to. And we are stopped. There we go. Kill the throttle. And that is landing on snow. Or ice. Snow's harder because it can be deeper. That's a whole different ballpark that we'd have to worry about in a simulator, because guess what? The snow is rock hard. It's like concrete. It's not mattering on checking the snow type you're landing on, or the firmness of the surface, or how recently it's been cold, see whether you'll get a hard surface, or whether it would be like a meringue, where you go through the hard surface into deep packed snow and kill the plane. Loads of things to worry about with snow landings, but in this case it's rock solid and it is firm, so benefit there. I want to love this add-on, because it brings something to a region that is so infrequently flown, but honestly, just look at it. It's... The region before Aerosoft turned up here was bad. Really bad. And their add-on does improve it, but it doesn't save it. Decision's yours, I guess. Thanks for watching. Bye.